The rain battered the streets of Seattle, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in my chest. I stood under the awning of a cafe, staring at the gold-embossed wedding invitation in my hand, the words Elliot Chun and Margaret Voss burning into my retinas. At 26, I was about to trade my heart for a deal that would save my family, but then he walked back into my life. My name is Elliot Chun, and I grew up in a crumbling apartment above my parents' struggling noodle shop in Seattle's International District. My father's bad investments and my mother's medical bills had drowned us in debt, and I was the only lifeline they had left. Enter Margaret Voss, a 40-year-old tech heiress with a sharp smile and a sharper mind, who offered me a way out, marry her, play the part of the perfect husband, and she'd erase my family's debts and fund my dream of becoming a chef. It wasn't lovey, it was a transaction, cold and calculated, but I'd said yes. What choice did I have? Until last night. I'd been wiping down tables at the noodle shop when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I hadn't seen in 3 years. I'm in town. Meet me. We need to talk. My stomach lurched. It was Lucas Reed, the man who'd once held my heart in his hands and crushed it without a backward glance. Lucas, with his reckless charm and piercing blue eyes, who'd left me for New York to chase his art career while I stayed behind, piecing myself back together. Now, here I was, standing outside the cafe where he'd asked to meet, the invitation still clutched in my hand. The door swung open, and there he was, taller than I remembered, his dark jacket slick with rain, his gaze locking onto mine like a missile finding its target. Elliot, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. You're really going through with this? I swallowed hard, my throat tight. You don't get to show up and judge me, Lucas. Not after you left. He stepped closer, the space between us crackling with years of unspoken words. I came back to stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life. The cafe was warm, a stark contrast to the chill seeping into my bones. We sat in a corner booth, the hum of conversation and clinking mugs fading into the background. Lucas leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly, as if he were holding himself back from reaching for me. I know about the deal, he said. Margaret Voss. The money. Your family. But, Elliot, you can't sell your soul for this. It's not my soul, I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. It's my family's future. You wouldn't understand. You never had to fight for anything. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw the old Lucas, the one who'd argue with me until dawn, who'd kiss me under the stars and promise we'd conquer the world together. That's not fair, he said quietly. I fought for us. I fought for you. But you were the one who told me to go. I looked away, the memories slicing through me like a knife. 3 years ago, Lucas had been offered a scholarship to an art program in New York. I told him to take it, to chase his dreams, because I couldn't bear to hold him back. But I hadn't expected him to walk away so easily, to stop calling, to vanish from my life like I'd meant nothing. I didn't come back to fight, he said, his voice softer now. I came back because I heard you were engaged, and I couldn't let you do this without knowing the truth. What truth? I asked, my heart racing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the table. It was a photocopy of an email, dated 2 weeks ago, from Margaret's assistant to a private investigator. The words blurred as I read. Dig up everything on Elliot Chun. Leverage for negotiations. She's playing you, Lucas said. This marriage isn't just about saving your family. She's using you to secure her company's image, to win over investors who think she's too ruthless. You're her trophy, Elliot. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong. But Margaret's cold pragmatism had always unsettled me. She'd never hidden that this was a business deal, but I hadn't realized I was the product being sold. Why do you care? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You left. You moved on. Lucas's eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something raw in them regret. Maybe. Or something deeper. I never moved on, he said. I thought I could. But every sketch I drew, every painting I made, it was you. Always you. The air between us felt too heavy, too charged. I wanted to hate him, to push him away. But his words stirred something I'd buried long ago. You can't just come back and say that, I said, my voice cracking. Not now. Not when I'm this close to fixing everything. Fixing everything, he echoed, leaning closer. Or losing yourself. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Lucas told me he'd been following Margaret's business dealings, piecing together her plans through contacts in New York's art world. She was on the verge of a massive merger, one that required her to project stability and respectability, something a young, charming husband could provide. But there was more, whispers of shady deals, hidden debts, and a board of directors ready to oust her if she didn't deliver. I didn't want to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. I'd always known Margaret was calculating, but I'd convinced myself it was worth it. Now, with Lucas sitting across from me, his presence a painful reminder of the life I'd once dreamed of, I wasn't so sure. I'm not asking you to run away with me, Lucas said as we stepped back into the ring. I'm asking you to think about what you're giving up. You deserve more than being someone's pawn. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of my family's hopes, Margaret's promises, and Lucas's return pressed down on me, each pulling me in a different direction. As I walked away, the invitation still in my pocket, I felt the first crack in the life I'd been trying to build. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen of my parents' noodle shop, the scent of simmering broth filling the air. My mother, frail but stubborn, was stirring a pot, her hands trembling slightly from the medication's side effects. Elliot, you're quiet today, she said, her voice soft but probing. I forced a smile, hiding the storm inside me. Lucas's words had kept me up all night, his revelations about Margaret twisting in my mind like a blade. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I was terrified of what I'd find. My family's survival depended on this marriage, and doubt was a luxury I couldn't afford. Yet, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucas's face, his voice whispering that I was worth more than this deal. I was scrubbing dishes when my phone rang. It was Margaret. Elliot, darling, she said, her tone smooth as silk. I need you at the Voss Enterprises Gala tonight. It's a big night for you's investors, board members, the works. Wear the suit I sent you. I hesitated. The email Lucas showed me flashing in my mind. Margaret, can we talk about the terms of our arrangement? A pause. Then, her voice sharpened just enough to notice. Everything's in the contract. Elliot, you signed it. Now, be there at 7. Don't disappoint me. The call ended, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. I glanced at my mother, humming softly as she chopped vegetables, and felt a pang of guilt. This was for her, for my father, for the shop that had been their life's work. I couldn't let Lucas's return unravel everything. The gala was a glittering affair, held in a sleek downtown Seattle ballroom with chandeliers casting light like falling stars. Margaret was in her element, her tailored gown hugging her frame as she worked the room, her laughter calculated to charm. I stood beside her, the borrowed suit feeling like a costume, my smile a mask. Every handshake, every introduction, felt like another chain locking me into her world. Elliot, you're doing wonderfully, she murmured during a quiet moment, her hand resting on my arm. The board loves you. Young, handsome, relatable, it's perfect. I forced a nod, but my eyes kept scanning the room, half expecting Lucas to appear. He didn't. but the weight of his words lingered. Was I really just a prop in her game? As the night wore on, I slipped away to the balcony for air, the city skyline sprawling below. That's when I heard footsteps. I turned, expecting Margaret, but it was her assistant, Claire, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who always seemed to know more than she let on. "Elliot," she said, her voice low. "I shouldn't be here, but you need to know something." She glanced over her shoulder, then handed me a flash drive. "Margaret's been hiding things. Financial records. Deal's not who she says she is. Look at this before you go any further." My heart pounded. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've seen what she does to people who trust her," Claire said, her eyes flickering with something like pity. "You're a good guy, Elliot. You don't deserve this." Before I could ask more, she vanished back into the crowd. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to pretend I'd never seen it. But another part, the part that still burned from Lucas's return, needed to know the truth. Back at my apartment, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, my hands shaking. The files were a maze of numbers and emails. But one document stood out, a memo outlining Margaret's plan to use our marriage to secure a merger with a rival company. My name was mentioned not as a partner, but as a strategic asset. There were even notes about my background, my family's debt, my culinary ambitions laid out like leverage points. I felt sick. Lucas had been right. This wasn't just about saving my family. It was about Margaret using me to cement her empire. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest tight with anger and betrayal. But beneath it all, there was something else, relief. If Margaret was lying, maybe I didn't have to go through with this. Maybe there was another way. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lucas. "Did you look at the email? I'm at the pier. Please, Elliot, talk to me." I stared at the message, torn between the life I'd promised my family and the one I'd lost with Lucas. The pier was where we'd spent countless nights 3 years ago, dreaming of a future we thought we'd build together. Going to him now felt like stepping back into a life I'd forced myself to forget. But I couldn't stay still. I grabbed my jacket and headed out into the night. The pier was quiet. The only sound, the gentle lapping of waves against the docks. Lucas stood at the edge, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. He turned as I approached, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said softly. "I saw the files," I said, my voice unsteady. "You were right about Margaret. But that doesn't mean I can just walk away. My family, your family loves you," he cut in. "They wouldn't want you to sacrifice your happiness for them. You know that." I shook my head, frustration boiling over. "You don't get it, Lucas. You never did. You had dreams, a scholarship, a way out. I had nothing but this shop, this debt, this deal." He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "You had me," he said, his voice breaking. "And I messed it up. I know that. But I'm here now, and I'm not letting you throw your life away." His words hit me like a punch, stirring memories of late-night talks, stolen kisses, promises we couldn't keep. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and he'd broken mine once before. "What do you want from me, Lucas?" I asked, my voice raw. "I want you to choose yourself," he said. "For once, Elliot, choose what you want." The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. Choose myself. I hadn't done that since the day I told Lucas to leave for New York, sacrificing my own heart to give him a chance at his dreams. Now, standing on the pier with him, the salt air stinging my face, I felt the weight of every choice I'd made since. "I don't know how," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the waves. "My parents, they're counting on me. If I walk away from Margaret, we lose everything." Lucas's hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me. You're not alone in this, Elliot. We can figure it out together. Just don't shut me out again. I pulled my hand away, the warmth of his touch lingering like a burn. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect me to trust you, I said. You left me. Lucas. You didn't even call. His face fell, and for a moment, he looked as lost as I felt. I thought you wanted me to go. I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought wrong, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I waited for you. Every day, I waited for a text, a call, anything. And you gave me nothing. He looked down, his hands shoving into his pockets. I was scared, he said. Scared I'd fail in New York. Scared I'd drag you down with me. I thought letting you go was the only way to protect you. I laughed, a bitter sound. Protect me. You broke me, Lucas. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned away, staring out at the dark water, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. I'd spent 3 years building walls around my heart, and now they were crumbling, piece by piece. I'm sorry, he said finally. I know I can't undo what I did. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving unless you tell me to. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at him to go, to leave me to the life I'd chosen. But another part, the part that still remembered the boy who'd made me feel alive, wanted to believe he meant it. The next day, I went to see Margaret. Her office at Voss Enterprises was a fortress of glass and steel, a reflection of her unyielding ambition. She sat behind her desk, her eyes narrowing as I walked in. Elliot, you're early, she said, her tone clipped. I hope this isn't about our little phone call yesterday. It's about the merger, I said, holding up the flash drive Claire had given me. And the fact that you've been using me as a bargaining chip. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around the pen she was holding. Where did you get that? Does it matter? I asked. Is it true? Am I just a prop to make you look good for your investors? She leaned back, her smile cold. You're being dramatic, Elliot. Yes, our marriage is strategic, but you knew that from the start. You get your family's debts cleared. I get a stable image. It's a win-win. A win-win, I echoed, my voice rising. You hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. You're leveraging my family's pain to control me. She stood, her heels clicking as she rounded the desk. Let's be clear, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You signed a contract. If you back out now, I'll make sure your family loses more than just the shop. I have resources, Elliot, and I'm not afraid to use them. Her words hit like a slap, but I held my ground. And I have the truth, I said. I could go to the press, tell them about your shady deals, your hidden debts. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't flinch. Try it, she said. You're a nobody, Elliot. No one will believe you over me. I left her office with my heart pounding, her threat echoing in my ears. She was right, I was a nobody. A kid from a failing noodle shop with no power to take on someone like her. But as I stepped into the elevator, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. That night, I met Lucas at his temporary studio, a cramped loft in Capitol Hill filled with half-finished paintings and the faint smell of turpentine. His latest work was a canvas of Seattle's skyline, but in the foreground, there was a figure that looked suspiciously like me, standing at the edge of a pier, his face caught between hope and despair. You painted me, I said, my voice catching. I told you, he said, stepping closer. It's always been you. I turned to face him, my emotions a tangled mess. I confronted Margaret. She threatened to destroy my family if I back out. His jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. We'll find a way. Elliot, I've got contacts in New York journalists, bloggers. We can expose her. And if that doesn't work? I asked. What then? Then we fight, he said, his eyes fierce. Together. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. But it was tempered by fear of Margaret, fear of failing my family, fear of letting myself love Lucas again. I need time, I said finally, to figure this out. He nodded, his hand brushing my cheek before he pulled back. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. The days that followed were a blur of doubt and determination. I went through the motions working at the noodle shop, attending fittings for the wedding, smiling for Margaret's investors, but my mind was elsewhere. Lucas's presence was a constant pull, his words a reminder that I had a choice, even if it felt like an impossible one. I started digging deeper into the files on Claire's flash drive, late at night when the shop was quiet. The more I read, the worse it got. Margaret's company was bleeding money, propped up by shady loans and offshore accounts. The merger she was banking on was her last chance to stay afloat, and I was the key to convincing the board she was stable enough to lead it. One evening, as I sat at my laptop, my father knocked on my door. Elliot, he said, his voice heavy with worry. You've been distant. Is something wrong? I wanted to tell him everything about Margaret, Lucas, the lies, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I shook my head. Just stressed about the wedding. I lied. He sat beside me, his hands rough from years of work. We never wanted this for you, he said. Your mother and I, we know what you're giving up for us. If there's another way, son, tell me. His words broke something in me. I'd spent so long convincing myself this was my duty, but hearing him acknowledge it made it real. I'm trying, Dad, I said, my voice thick. I'm trying to find a way. The next day, I met Lucas at a diner, away from prying eyes. He'd been reaching out to his contacts, trying to find someone willing to publish the truth about Margaret. There's a journalist in New York who's interested, he said, sliding a notebook across the table with a name and number scrawled inside. She's got a reputation for taking down corporate giants. If we can get her the files, she'll run with it. I nodded, but my stomach churned. If we do this, there's no going back. Margaret will come after my family. Lucas reached for my hand, his grip firm. I won't let that happen. I promise. I pulled away, the weight of his promise too much to bear. You can't promise that, Lucas. You don't know what she's capable of. Then let me help you fight, he said, his voice fierce. You don't have to do this alone. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and I wasn't sure I had any left to give. Still, I took the notebook. The journalist's name a small spark of hope in the darkness. That night, I attended another of Margaret's events, this time a charity auction at her waterfront estate. The guests were a who's who of Seattle's elite, their laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the storm inside me. Margaret was radiant, her arm linked with mine as she introduced me as her future husband, each word tightening the noose around my neck. During a quiet moment, I slipped away to the study, where I'd overheard Margaret mention keeping sensitive documents. The room was dark, save for the glow of a computer screen. I hesitated, then sat at the desk, my fingers trembling as I searched for anything that could corroborate Claire's files. That's when the door opened. Elliot. Margaret's voice was sharp, her silhouette framed in the doorway. What are you doing in here? I froze, my heart hammering. I needed a moment alone, I stammered, shutting the computer screen. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she'd see right through me. But then she smiled. A predator's smile. Don't wander too far, darling. The guests are waiting. As she left, I let out a shaky breath, my hands still trembling. I hadn't found anything, but the encounter left me rattled. Margaret wasn't just powerful, she was dangerous. And I was running out of time. Back at the noodle shop, I called the journalist Lucas had found. Her name was Rachel Nguyen, a fierce investigative reporter with a track record of exposing corporate corruption. I sent her the files from Claire's flash drive, my heart pounding as I hit send. She'll need time to verify everything, Lucas said when I told him. We were at his studio again, the air thick with the scent of paint and possibility. But if anyone can take Margaret down, it's her. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. What if it's not enough? What if Margaret finds out? Lucas stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. Then we'll face it together. I'm not leaving you, Elliot. Not again. His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. Letting him back in meant risking everything, not just my family's future, but my heart. The waiting was torture. Every day, I expected Margaret to confront me, to know I'd betrayed her. But she carried on as if nothing had changed, her plans for the wedding moving forward with ruthless precision. Invitations went out, caterers were hired, and the media buzzed with stories of our whirlwind romance. I played my part, smiling for the cameras, but inside, I was unraveling. Lucas was my anchor, his presence a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. We met in secret, stealing moments in diners and quiet corners of the city. He showed me sketches he'd done in New York, portraits of me, of us, each one a piece of the life we'd lost. I carried you with me, he said one night, his voice soft. Every day? I wanted to believe him, but the fear of losing everything kept me guarded. What if this doesn't work? I asked. What if Rachel's story falls through, and I'm stuck with Margaret? Then we'll find another way, he said, his eyes steady. I'm not giving up on you, Elliot. His words stirred something in me, a flicker of the love I'd buried. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. Story's ready. It's big. Meet me tomorrow. The meeting with Rachel was at a nondescript coffee shop on the outskirts of Seattle. She was in her 30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. The files you sent are gold, she said, sliding a tablet across the table. Offshore accounts. Falsified reports. Margaret's been cooking the books for years. This story will tank her merger. I stared at the draft article, my heart racing. It was damning, every word a nail in Margaret's coffin. But it also meant the end of my deal with her and the safety net for my family. What happens when this goes public? I asked. Rachel leaned back, her expression grim. She'll fight back. Hard. You need to be ready for that. I nodded, my mind spinning. Ready. I wasn't even sure what that meant. But as I left the coffee shop, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting, I was taking control. That night, I told my parents everything. We sat in the living room above the noodle shop, the weight of my confession filling the air. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and my father's hands clenched into fists. We never wanted you to sacrifice yourself for us, my mother said, her voice breaking. We thought you loved her. I don't, I said, the truth spilling out. I never did. I was doing it for you. My father stood, pulling me into a hug. You're our son, Elliot. Your happiness matters more than the shop, more than anything. Their words broke me, but they also set me free. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to carry this burden alone. They didn't want me to marry Margaret any more than I did. The next morning, Rachel's article hit the internet. By noon, it was everywhere: news sites, social media, even local TV. The headline screamed, Voss Enterprises faces fraud allegations as merger looms. Margaret's carefully crafted image began to crumble, and with it, her hold over me. But she didn't go down quietly. That afternoon, she called me to her office. Her face was a mask of fury, her voice cold as ice. "You did this," she said, tossing a printout of the article onto her desk. "You think you can ruin me. Elliot, I'll bury you and your family." "You're the one who lied," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. "This isn't about me. It's about the truth." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Truth. The truth is, you're nothing without me. You think you can walk away. I'll make sure you regret it." I left her office with my heart pounding, but I felt lighter than I had in months. The deal was off, and for the first time, I saw a future that wasn't dictated by her. That night, I found Lucas at the pier, the same place where we'd reconnected. He was waiting for me, his face lit with a cautious hope. "I saw the article," he said. "You did it, Elliot." "We did it," I corrected, a smile tugging at my lips. "But it's not over. Margaret's not going to let this go." "Then we'll face her together," he said, stepping closer. "I meant what I said, Elliot. I'm not leaving you again." This time, I didn't pull away. I let him take my hand, his warmth grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I don't know what's next," I admitted, "but I know I don't want to do it without you." Margaret's retaliation came swiftly. By the next morning, my family's noodle shop was slapped with a lawsuit, claiming unpaid debts tied to a loan I'd never heard of. The paperwork was meticulous, the kind of thing only someone with Margaret's resources could fabricate. My parents were devastated, their faces pale as they read the legal notice. "This is my fault," I said, my voice hollow. "I pushed her too far." My father shook his head, his eyes fierce. "No, Elliot. You did what was right. We'll fight this." But I knew we couldn't, not without help. Margaret's influence ran deep, her connections a web that could crush us. I needed to find a way to protect my family, and fast. Lucas was waiting for me at his studio, his face grim as I told him about the lawsuit. "She's trying to scare you," he said, pacing the room. "But we have leverage now. The article's gaining traction, people are talking. Investors are pulling out. She's desperate." "Desperate people are dangerous," I said, sinking onto a stool. "She could ruin us before the truth catches up." Lucas stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto mine. "Then we hit her harder. Rachel's working on a follow-up story, and I've got a friend in New York who knows a lawyer willing to take your family's case pro bono." I stared at him, hope flickering despite the fear. "Why are you doing this, Lucas? You could walk away. Go back to your life in New York." He knelt in front of me, his hands resting on my knees. "Because I love you, Elliot. I never stopped. And I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." His words hit me like a tidal wave, washing away the walls I'd built. I leaned forward, my forehead resting against his. And for a moment, the world fell away. It was just us, the way it used to be. The lawyer, a woman named Sarah Lopez, was a force of nature. She met us at the noodle shop, her briefcase stuffed with documents and her eyes sharp with determination. "Margaret's lawsuit is a bluff," she said, spreading papers across the counter. "The loan documents are riddled with inconsistencies. I can tie this up in court for months. And with the press on your side, she'll back off." My mother clutched my hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "for fighting for us." Sarah smiled, but her tone was serious. "Don't thank me yet. Margaret's got deep pockets and deeper grudges. You need to stay one step ahead." That night, I helped my parents close the shop, the familiar rhythm of cleaning and prepping grounding me. As I locked the door, I felt a strange sense of peace. We were fighting, together, and for the first time, I believed we could win. But Margaret wasn't done. The next day, a gossip blog posted a smear piece about me, painting me as a gold digger who'd seduced Margaret for her money, only to betray her. The comments were vicious, tearing into my family, my background, my identity. I felt exposed, raw, like every part of me was under attack. Lucas found me at the apartment, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. "Don't read that garbage," he said, shutting my laptop. "It's just noise. Margaret's trying to hurt you, but she's losing." "It doesn't feel like it," I said, my voice breaking. "She's taking everything from me." Lucas pulled me into his arms, his embrace steady and warm. "She can't take this," he said, his voice fierce. "She can't take us." I clung to him, the weight of the past few weeks crashing over me. For the first time, I let myself cry not out of despair, but out of relief. I wasn't alone anymore. The tide began to turn. Rachel's follow-up article dropped, detailing more of Margaret's financial misdeeds, and the public backlash grew. Investors pulled out of the merger, and rumors swirled that the board was planning to oust her. The lawsuit against the noodle shop was quietly withdrawn, Sarah's legal maneuvering paying off. But I knew Margaret wouldn't go down without a final blow. Late one night, she called me. "You think you've won," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You're nothing, Elliot. You'll always be nothing." I hung up, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Her words didn't hurt anymore. I'd found something stronger than her threats myself, and the people who loved me. The fallout was swift. By the end of the week, Margaret was removed as CEO of Voss Enterprises, her empire crumbling under the weight of Rachel's articles and public outrage. The wedding was canceled, the invitations shredded, and my family's debts were left unpaid, but we were free. I stood in the noodle shop, watching my parents laugh as they served customers, their faces lighter than I'd seen in years. The shop was struggling, but we'd found a small business loan to keep it afloat, and my father was talking about new recipes, new ideas. For the first time, I saw a future that didn't depend on Margaret's money. Lucas was there too, helping with deliveries, his sleeves rolled up as he carried boxes of supplies. He decided to stay in Seattle, renting a studio space to continue his art. "You're stuck with me now," he teased one day, his grin infectious. I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Good," I said. "I wouldn't have it any other way." But freedom came with its own challenges. The smear campaign had left scars, and I struggled with the public's judgment, the whispers that followed me. One afternoon, as I was prepping ingredients, a customer recognized me from the gossip blogs. "You're that guy who tried to scam Margaret Voss," she said, her voice loud enough to turn heads. I froze, my face burning. But before I could respond, my mother stepped in. "My son saved our family," she said, her voice firm. "He's a good man, and you don't know him." The customer left, and my mother hugged me, her strength a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. "You're enough, Elliot," she said. "You always have been." That night, Lucas and I went back to the pier, the place where our story had begun again. The city lights shimmered on the water, and for once, the weight on my shoulders was gone. "I was wrong," I said, turning to him. "About you. About us. I thought letting you go was the right thing, but it wasn't." He smiled, his hand finding mine. "We both made mistakes, but we're here now." I nodded, my heart full. "I love you, Lucas." I never stopped. He pulled me close, his lips brushing mine, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. The kiss was soft at first, then deepening, a promise of everything we'd rebuild together. The next day, I started working on my own dreams. I enrolled in a culinary program, using savings from the shop and a scholarship Lucas helped me find. It wasn't much, but it was a started chance to become the chef I'd always wanted to be, on my own terms. Lucas was there every step of the way, his support unwavering. He painted, I cooked, and together, we carved out a life that was messy and imperfect, but ours. The noodle shop became a hub for our friends, a place where we laughed and planned and dreamed. Margaret faded into the background, her threats empty now that her power was gone. I heard she'd left Seattle, her name a cautionary tale in the business world. I didn't care. She was my past, and I was done living for anyone but myself. Months later, the noodle shop was thriving, thanks to a crowdfunding campaign Lucas and I had launched with help from Rachel and Sarah. The community rallied around us, their support a reminder that we weren't alone. My parents were healthier, their smiles brighter, and I was halfway through my culinary program, my dishes earning praise from instructors who saw my potential. Lucas's art was gaining traction too, his latest exhibit drawing crowds to a small gallery in Capitol Hill. One of his pieces a vibrant painting of the pier, with two figures standing hand in hand old for enough to cover his rent for a year. It's us, he told me, his eyes shining. Our story. We moved in together, a tiny apartment above the shop, filled with his sketches and my recipe notes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home. Every night, we cooked together, laughed together, loved together, building a life that was ours alone. One evening, as we sat on the pier, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lucas turned to me. I've been thinking, he said, his voice soft. About us. About the future. I raised an eyebrow, my heart skipping a beat. Yeah. He pulled a small box from his pocket, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with the outline of a pier. I don't have much, he said, but I have you, and that's everything. Elliot Chun, will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. Yes, Lucas. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and we kissed, the world falling away. It wasn't a deal, a contract, or a sacrifice. It was love real, messy, beautiful love. Years later, I'd look back on that moment as the start of everything. The noodle shop became a local legend. My culinary career took off, and Lucas's art found its way into galleries across the country. But more than that, we had each author a partnership built on trust, forgiveness, and the courage to choose ourselves. Margaret's shadow was gone, replaced by the light of a life we'd fought for. I'd agreed to marry a rich businessman for my family, but in the end, I chose love, and it saved us all.